The Legend of Zelda, the game series that has the most confusing and insane timeline that even Nintendo, the creators, cannot figure out for themselves, nor can the community, it seems. But as a new game just got released, the argument of where that game lies in the timeline has begun. Tears of the Kingdom is the newest installment of the Zelda franchise. It does another mind-bending timeline situation. For this video's case, I will be using the adult timeline due to it making the most sense for my theory. I would like to point out though, before my theory begins, Nintendo has clearly stated that Breath of the Wild is not connected to any of the previous games, as it is in its own timeline. It is at the end of the timeline, or it's just straight up not connected. But today, I bring to you, what if Breath of the Wild was a part of the timeline? And where would Tears of the Kingdom lie, a part of that timeline? To start, let's just say all the armor and amiibo and all those accessories that you can get in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that are from other games are just inserted there for fans and not actually mean anything for the timeline, because if they did, then it would be a whole mess to figure out how the timeline works. As said before, we're going to go off with Breath of the Wild as a part of the adult timeline, because that would just make the most sense. So that would mean Tears of the Kingdom would also be a part of the adult timeline, as it would only make sense. Due to Demise's curse on Ganondorf making him come back even if he died, there isn't much that needs to be said to explain the time between Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass until the new Kingdom of Hyrule is formed in a new land. Now in this new Hyrule, we can assume that the Zonai decided to step in and aid the people of Hyrule in their creation of the new kingdom, since they weren't really there before this new Hyrule was formed. Now, you might be saying to yourself as a die-hard Zelda fan, wait a minute, doesn't the adult timeline have spirit tracks? Well, let me tell you. Spirit Tracks makes no sense to me, as they are exploring the new land of Hyrule, known as New Hyrule, as the game puts it, which might I add, already has tracks laid out between all of Hyrule and a kingdom that is already set up throughout the entire land. And it's only been 10 years since the flooding in Wind Waker. I don't know about you, but that seems a little dumb. Oh, and the map is wrong, so there's that. So why is it even in the timeline knowing things from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? Like the fact that there are no railroads throughout all of Hyrule? I don't know about you, but I'm just not going to include it in the timeline. So I'm sorry if I get a bit of hate, which I guess I understand. But really, I'm going to call this game a distant legend or something and just ignore it. In the beginning of the new modern Hyrule, which I will just be calling Hyrule from now on, everything happened as it should, and nothing out of place had happened, and let the events of Breath of the Wild, where Ganon's malice takes over Hyrule and Link is sent into the Shrine of Resurrection for 100 years, still take place. After Link awakens and defeats the malice, by the way, if you didn't know, the understanding of the community is just an energy that's covering Ganondorf's body. In his Dark Beast form, it's unleashed. But this explains another thing in Tears of the Kingdom, as in why Ganondorf was able to awaken when he did. He was gaining his power back and released Malice, but eventually he managed to gain control of his own body again. Coincidentally, just as Link and Zelda walked into the chambers, possibly due to the presence of the Master Sword, maybe it was the fact that they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or Raru's hand finally just loses control over Ganondorf's body and he awakens. But, in Memory 14, Rauru tells Ganondorf about Link and the Master Sword. That might be why he was able to awaken after Link entered his chamber. But, I digress. Now this part here is very important to how the timeline gets altered. Zelda, upon entering the chamber, very clearly is unaware of what is there. She is surprised by all the paintings on the wall, all the murals. She's surprised that there's Zonai. And the fact that she literally doesn't know that Ganondorf is down there, this all leads to my belief that the timeline isn't exactly a loop, as many people have been stating recently. When Zelda eventually falls down with the Secret Stone of Time and ends up in the past, I believe it to be the present, but a new version of the past where Zelda exists that is creating a new version of the future. These two timelines, I believe, end up joining at one point, and that point can be really any point, I guess, but I think the point is when Zelda's supposed to fall down again and go into the past. But due to her being now a dragon and not with Link when she's supposed to be there at that timeline, she starts just a brand new future. To everyone else, happens in an instant, but to Zelda is a very, very long time. Anyways, you may be asking yourself by now, how does the timeline work then? Well, when I was discussing this with one of my friends, Fake Bob Ross, I came up with this version of the timeline where the past stays the same, but at the point that Zelda goes back in time, she starts a new version of the past, which at the point of where I've chosen to be when she is supposed to fall again, that is when the new timeline merges with the old timeline, because everyone still seems to remember their old past, like, you know, the divine beasts and the Sheikah technology and all of that stuff that went down with Malice. Now you may go, why do people remember the things that they shouldn't remember? Because it's a new timeline. Well, like I said, this question could be answered with the idea that the two timelines end up being merged. The people of Hyrule are actually aware of the things that are different, such as people of a Hitino village are confused by a giant structure above their village, which they never knew prior to Tears of the Kingdom. As well as the fact that in Terrytown, they've got this stone, this green stone. I don't know what it is, it's a green stone. And they've also developed new, might I add, very new, they even say, I'm pretty sure the word's new, Zonai technology. You also might be asking, but why wasn't the Sheikah tech ever developed? Well, if we look at Tier 12, the helmets of the Divine Beasts do exist, but as we can clearly see, they are more of a green color, just like the Zonai tech. But where did it all go in the current world? Well, seeing as there is a lot of holes in the ground, likely the Sheikah tech that was everywhere and when the new timeline came in and it disturbed all the original timeline stuff, Sheikah tech shouldn't have ever existed in this new timeline, causes like a ripple in time, and it left giant holes into the ground. Now, obviously this didn't happen everywhere, so this puts a bit of a pin in my theory, but if we look at the Great Plateau, there are 4 holes where all of the original shrines for Breath of the Wild used to be. Hope nobody was standing next to any of those shrines. Anyways, so why did the Zonai make the new technology? Well, that would be likely due to the fact that Zelda brought back the Puripad to Minoru, who is, you know, someone who likes to tinker around with stuff. The Puripad, which was developed after studying the Sheikah technology, could have spawned more technology advances that the Sheikah never needed to develop. The Divine Beasts, the towers, the shrines, all of that technology just disappeared, because the Zonai didn't need any of that technology. They never developed it. This technology clearly did not exist, though, during Breath of the Wild, because of the conversations you can have with people about their new tech. For example, like I said, in Terrytown, you can talk to someone about their Zonai rail system, which they get very mad if you decide to burn it. Don't ask why I know that. Another thing that supports my idea that this timeline works the way it does instead of being a loop is the Shrine of Resurrection. I don't know if you've been to the Great Plateau and went back to the Shrine of Resurrection to relive those old, good Breath of the Wild memories, but sadly, you can't. The Shrine of Resurrection is gone. It is a pool of water replaced with a Yiga hideout dug into the ground now. The fact that we now have technology completely different from Breath of the Wild and brand new technology developed by the Zonai is more proof to this theory on the Great Plateau. Now, what about the Master Sword? Due to Zelda being a dragon powering the Master Sword, this means that the Master Sword also no longer would have been a part of Breath of the Wild. So, it has to be a different timeline, at least at a certain point due to the fact that the sword is known and found in the Korok Forest before Link and Zelda go down to the chamber of Ganondorf's body. Even in Tears of the Kingdom, we have a memory that shows the Master Sword still in the forest. So as my friend Fake Bob Ross said, unless the divine beasts are in a comically large garage, I believe this to be the way that the timeline of at least Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild work. Because even if we go by Nintendo's timeline of these two games not being a part of the main timeline, I believe my theory is still the best way to lay out those timelines. That is, before the DLC gets released. Well, that was my theory. Tears of the Kingdom has been a lot of fun, and I may have already spent over 100 hours in this game, defeated Ganondorf, and found all the shrines and the light roots. But the game still has much more to offer, as I have only completed 50% of the game according to my map. So if for some reason you watched this without owning and played the game, I highly recommend it, even at its $70 price tag. And if you have anything you think I got wrong or should be altered, leave a comment so we might find a better version of this timeline. Also, if you could subscribe, that would mean the world to me, as I'm a small creator and this video is a lot of work. So if you could just make that little subscribe button change colors, that would mean the world to me. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.